All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you guys see my screen that has a PowerPoint presentation on it? Somebody can just type in chat and say yes. That'd be awesome. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. So today's class will be covering year-end. How do we prepare for year-end in Sage? If we are going to archive our oldest fiscal year, the general ledger, how do we do that? And then 1099 process. How do we process 1099s in Sage? If you took last year's class or you've taken this before, pretty much nothing has changed. I think I talked about it last week. The only thing that I saw different that Sage is recommending is that installing the update that's supposed to come out in a couple days before we process our tax forms. I've received a couple emails since the last class talking about errors or audit errors that they've received in their test runs for 1099s or W-2s. I would hold off on, on those errors because we don't have the update yet. And if you guys remember from last week, I said it was coming out, or at least from what we've heard, it's coming out December 19th, which is in a couple days. Sage recommends, this is the first year I've seen it, that you install the update before you prepare your tax forms because it will correct some issues or potential issues in the system. So if after you install your update and you go to run your W-2s or 1099s, you still have the error, then I will jump on board and help troubleshoot it. But we'll help troubleshoot it, but I feel like because they've mentioned, Sage anyways has mentioned we need to update before we prepare those forms, that maybe we should do that first and see if we still have errors, because that may correct any errors that we're seeing. So if you can just hold on a couple more days so that we can get that in from Sage and updated, that may fix the errors. If not, definitely we need to figure it out what the errors are. Like I said, we're going to be preparing for 2024 close today. We're going to talk about advancing to the next fiscal year. We kind of covered that at the end of our last class last week. The process for archiving 2024 general ledger data. I wouldn't recommend archiving 2024 general ledger data. I probably should put oldest fiscal year. You don't have to archive your general ledger every single year. Sage recommends, or at least we recommend, every other year. If you don't want to do it every other year, I personally don't have a problem with it. And you will know because your system will become sluggish if there's a lot of information in your system. So where I feel that maybe you would know if you need to archive your general ledger, one is if your system is sluggish, it's running slow because you're trying to, when you're querying up a report, it takes forever. Because there's a lot of information, a lot of years worth of data, you might want to archive your general ledger. Also, when you're running a financial report and you use the drop-down list to find the period, if you're having to scroll for many, many years down to 2024, and you're like, why do I still see 2020? Why do I see 2021? I don't need this in my system. I don't want it in my system. Then that should mean trigger to you. It's time to archive my general ledger, because you can archive the oldest fiscal year and you only do 1 year at a time. So I would probably be archiving 2020 if it's in your system. I may even be archiving 2021. 22, getting close. Personally, I had 4 years open when I used Sage, just because it's in one database. I wanted to run reports and trend reports in one database. I didn't have to switch databases. So that's going to be up to you guys, but we will walk through the process today of how do we archive the oldest fiscal year. Again, it's going to be the oldest one in your system, and then it's 1 year at a time. You can't archive multiple years at the same time. We'll talk about processing 1099s, NEC, miscellaneous, those 1099s, and then available resources. As I talked about last week, you have to have access to the database administration tool on your server in order to perform the general ledger and then the payroll archiving functions. I also talked about make sure you have enough space. And I was going to show you guys this last week, but I didn't. At least I don't think I did. So how do you check the health of your server? Did I show you guys this? I thought I could, now I'm sick and on cough medicine and stuff and I can't remember. You need access to this tool. I'm going to show you again in case I didn't, to check to make sure there's enough space on your server and check the health of your server. Actually, I did show you this, I remember, but I'm going to show it to you again, just so you guys can check it out, especially archive your general ledger. That usually contains a lot of information, so you need space on your server. I wasn't anticipating my server running slow this morning. I had a question come in, so I'll just answer it really quickly while I'm waiting for this. If a project spans multiple years, how does archiving a year affect job reports? So if the job is still ongoing in a current status, nothing is going to be archived related to that job. So all of the information related to that job will still be there. The job has to be closed or refused in order to be archived and all the data associated with it to be archived. So if you archived your general ledger and it contains transactions for a project or a job that's not archived, those transactions are not going to be archived. And we'll talk about that today. So the health of your server, for first thing, when you come into your server and you open up this tool, if you see that it automatically opens up to the upgrade SQL Server instance and there's an update available, Sage recommends that you keep this updated all the time. So SQL is what Sage is running on. If it's not on the newest version, then it may also cause it to be sluggish or maybe issues. So you definitely want to make sure, if you guys have access to this tool, which I definitely recommend you do, that you're making sure the SQL is updated. And if you aren't going to do it, make sure your IT is doing it. Put that on their list of things to do, to check. It's literally just a click of a button, and then Sage downloads the SQL update from Microsoft and installs it. It takes like 10 to 15 minutes, but you should probably be doing that after hours, just in case. So click update SQL. Sage is going to run fine if it's not updated, but you definitely want to make sure it's updated all the time. So to check the health of your server, toolbox, dashboard, it's going to run a health check in each one of these items. Your power plan, your database usage, SQL memory allocation. If it's not green, then there's an issue and your system is not running optimally. So you'll want to check with your IT company to figure out how to resolve the issue. Like you see, my system isn't running very fast. It's kind of running slow. This is the problem. There's not enough memory. You can click view details, and then you can send this screenshot to your IT along with Sage's minimum requirements. We should be more than minimum. You can find the minimum requirements for your version of Sage in the knowledge base. This is the knowledge base. And you can just put in system requirements. Make sure you're on Sage 100 Contractor. And then right here, 26.1, we're about to be on 26.3. You guys should all be on 26.2. So you'll be able to find 26.2. Oh, here we go, 26.2 and 23. This is the system requirements. If you click on it, it says down here, the minimum and the recommended. Make sure that your system is always meeting at least minimum, but I would recommend obviously the recommended, right? All right. So that's the database administration tool that I'm using that's on your server. That's how I got this information. The new update is supposed to be released on the 19th. That's not next week. That's in a couple days. So preparation to close 2024. Create your folder, to house your general ledger reports in. This is just a recommendation. You do not have to archive your records prior to moving your accounting period to one of the next fiscal year. You do not have to. In fact, some of you may have already moved it to fiscal year 1, potentially. I know some people do in advance. Advancing from period 11, which is November, and I'm talking about in 1/6 in your system. So 1/6 period fiscal year management. Advancing from period 11 to 12 in your current fiscal year opens up period 1 of the next fiscal year. Periods 2 through 12 of the next fiscal year become available when you move to period 1, as long as you have a clean audit. So today, if you look at your system in 1/6, and you go to change period, I need to be in exclusively. I thought I was. So right now, I'm in, my current period is December, and I can change it to January of 2025. When I do that, what the PowerPoint is saying is that 2 through 12, February through December of 2025 will become available. It's not until then that they become available though. So if you're looking at your periods for 25 and you only see January, that's because we haven't advanced to January as far as making that our default posting period. And once we do, then the rest of the year opens up. December is my default right now, which is why I can see January. I get calls every year to ask where the rest of the year is. So that's why I wanted to cover it, because it's something that I get asked all the time, like, hey, I'm missing the rest of my months. Well, you won't see the rest of the months of the new year until this becomes your default. Okay. You can have multiple years of data open. You can choose to archive as often as you like. Like I said earlier, it's up to you guys on when you archive. I would not recommend archiving 2024, especially since, a lot of you are new to Sage. You definitely don't want to have that in a separate database. You want to complete the entry of all the transactions and corrections for the oldest fiscal year. This will be 2024. That's just a given for all of the accountants on the call. Including adjustments provided by your tax advisor, and clear up any audit errors. So what this means as far as adjustments by your tax advisor, at the end of every year, you give your financials over to your CPA. They close your books, or they prepare the adjusting entries for that year. The accountant, the CPA's office, should be giving you journal entries to post so that your journal entries match your tax return. You should have done that already for 2023. If you haven't, then that's something you probably should do. The reason why we're saying this is because you want to make sure that your books match your tax returns prior to you archiving that oldest fiscal year. After you archive that general ledger year, you should not make any changes to it. So you want to make sure it's completely clear and clean, including those tax adjustments from the CPA's office. Also, any audit errors that you get in the general ledger should be clean. There should not be any audit errors. We talked last week also that payroll archiving is a completely separate process, right? We talked about that process. In the new version of Sage, though, you can archive payroll and the general ledger at the same time if you wanted to. I don't know, I probably would never want to do that. You must have exclusive access to archive the general ledger and use the database administration tool. We talked about that. Make sure your current backup has been created before moving forward. We'll go through that process. You want to make sure that you go through your trial balance, especially the balance sheet accounts, to make sure you know and understand all those balances. This is just general best practice on the accounting side. Reconcile your bank statements. Make sure there are no old transactions open. That's really important, and something I see often is that when I go to look at somebody's bank account with them and they're wanting me to help them reconcile or figure out a discrepancy, and we pull up the year or the month, excuse me, that we are reconciling, and then I see old transactions and say we're reconciling December, and I'm like, wait, why do you still have these transactions open and available for posting? That those should have been cleaned up right when you were reconciling that month. So if you have old transactions in here, you need to take care of those. If you don't know how, you can reach out to your consultant or your accountant, and they should be able to help you. There should be nothing old in here, unless it's legitimate outstanding item that hasn't cleared your bank yet. On the credit card statement side, there literally should be nothing in there. Like, it should be very clean because those clear right away. This one, I'm not sure how many people are making sure this happens, but you want to make sure that your job costs tie out to the income statement. In Sage, it should never be different. You can run 2 reports. Obviously, one is going to be your income statement. It's your regular income statement. You can run it for the whole year if you wanted to run it for the whole year. And this number here, 1.8 million, if I run a job cost report for the whole year, it should match this number exactly. If it doesn't, there's a problem. Any job cost report, I always ran 61621. This is a sample company, so it's not going to match. I'm not even going to show you guys, but in your company it should. So 61621 and do, you know, the whole year. Run the report. If it matches, I'm going to be shocked. Yeah, it doesn't match. It's off like $4,000 or something like that, but it should match exactly in yours. You want to make sure your AR and AP subledgers tie to the balance sheet. What that means is run an aging, an AP aging, an AR aging, 31356. That's the report number, 31356 through December. Run it, make sure it matches your balance sheet. It should not be off because Sage doesn't allow it, but I've seen some crazy things. So you want to make sure this number right here, 393,000, matches your balance sheet for that year, for the year end, this year. And it matches exactly. So you want to do that for AR and AP inventory if you have inventory. Run a trailing 12-month, look for variance, makes corrections. These are all things that you should be doing every month anyways, just as best practice. So if you don't have a checklist of month end, maybe this would be a good start and make it a checklist. These are things you should be doing as far as running these reports and making sure they tie every single month anyways. If you do that every month, then year end will be a breeze. So the trailing 12 months that I'm talking about is the last 12 periods. 2, 3, 34. This, and you can leave December. This is like one of my favorite reports when I was working in the field. It's really great to look month over month and look for variances. meaning if you're comparing rent every single month, it should be the same, just like it is here, very clean. There are no variances. If I go down to accounting fees and I see, oh, 1,500 in February is and then 4,000 in April. Well, what happened in April? Oh, maybe it was our tax return or something like that. I can dig in and understand what the variance is. So this just helps you make sure that nothing looks out of whack, nothing is misposted. You can catch issues, and I would be running this every month, comparing it to previous month to make sure that, you know, just to see the trend, see the variances, things like that. Like we didn't have any material cost in January. That's weird to me. Right? So those type of things. So any questions about preparation to close the year? Steps that you should be taking? I had a question come in. We're still on 25.3. Can we update just the year end 26.3, or do we need to update all the previous updates first? No, you don't have to update the previous. You can just jump to 26.3. No questions. All right. So advancing to the new fiscal year. This is just telling you how to get into 2025. Navigate to 1.6, select change the period, make sure the posting period is set to 1 of the new year. And then lock future periods 2 through 12 down from accidental entry. So to advance to the next fiscal year, again, you're going to go to 1.6. You have to be in exclusively, requires exclusive access. If you don't know how to do that, you just click change company / access and check the box. You don't have to do this now, but this is how you're going to advance and make January your default. It says your current period is 12. You're going to advance to period 1, change period. Sage is going to run an audit. As long as it's clean, you can advance to the next fiscal year. Then it'll give you a notice that 2 through 12 is now available for posting. That means the rest of the year is open. Then what my slide says is go to 2025 and lock down these periods. December is really important because if you're a user that's used to only putting the month and the day in and not putting in the year in their dates, if you guys do that, I do it all the time. That's what I'm used to. I don't put in the year. And we advance to January 2025. Sage thinks we're now in 2025. But if we're still working on December 2024 close and you're a user that doesn't put in the year, Sage is going to put it as a 2025 year. If I put in 12/24 and I don't put in 24, that's where I want it to go. Sage will automatically put it in 25 because it thinks I'm in 25 because January is my new default. So just pay attention to that. And if you lock December down, that won't happen. The user won't be able to accidentally post into December of 2025. So if you lock these years, this next year down, subsequent periods, that would be best practice, and you should be doing that anyways. And then once you're ready, you know, for February, you can open it. I had some questions come in just to confirm what you said last week. We should wait to install the new update until after we've run our last 2024 payroll, correct? Correct. Yes. You want to wait until after you've ran your last 2024 payroll, and then you install the update. The update corrects tax forms, or could correct tax forms. So you definitely want to wait until after your last payroll run though, because it also could contain tax updates for 2025, right? So run your last payroll of 2024, install the update, and then do your forms. Prepare your W-2s and 1099s. Those are not due until January 31st. So for those of you that are in, like, want to do it right now, that's awesome. You're ahead of the game. But Sage isn't even allowing us to do it because we need that update first. So yeah, run your last payroll, install the update, then do your forms. Can I assume, another question, can I assume that you can reopen December to make adjusting entries that sometime do not come in until after several months after that? Yeah, yes, absolutely. You can open up December whenever you want to open up December. Oops. You just toggle to that year. Like I could even go back to 20, well, if it was open. If December was closed here, it's locked, I could go back in June and open up December if I needed to. If that's when my CPA got my taxes done and my closing entries, I could go do that. Like I said in the first slide, in preparation of archiving, what you want to make sure is that you don't archive before you've posted those closing entries from the CPA. So you want to make sure that your books are completely clean and you've posted those entries before you archive your oldest fiscal year. So, because if you archived and then you got your CPA adjustments, you'd have to post the adjustments to your archive and then post them to this period 0 in your active company so that they're in the beginning balances and then also in your archive. So it's kind of a painful process. If you just make sure everything is posted before you archive, then you'll be safe. Is it okay to archive payroll and then install the update? This is from Sage. This is knowledge base. I can put this article in chat. I just copied this KB article solution ID number and put it in chat, but this is Sage's US edition recommended timeline of year-end tasks, when and what to do, so that you guys have that at your fingertips. So it says ensure that you're using the current version of Sage before installing the year-end update. It's saying no, make sure that it's not older than 1 year. So if it's not older than 1 year, then you're safe. Post all current tax year payroll records, perform a payroll audit, which we talked about last week. Reconcile your payroll reports. Install the year-end update is step 4. Because this says the year-end update may include program fixes affecting payroll, closed payroll year, and archiving the oldest payroll year and archiving oldest fiscal year. Like I said, this is the first year I've ever seen this, so it's important that we follow this order. Then you can close your payroll or archive your oldest payroll year. So, Cindy, your question, is it okay to archive payroll and then install the update? No, you should not do that. Not this year, because Sage is saying we have to do it in this order now. So I put in chat the knowledge base article. All you have to do is paste that number into knowledge base and you're going to get the same timeline. So, you know, have this bookmarked. So after you close your payroll year and archive your oldest payroll year, archive it. If you know you have to do one or the other on payroll. You're either going to close it or you're going to archive it. You're going to do that after you install the update. You should not do it before. Different than what we've seen previous years. Then reconcile the bank account, advance the posting period, enter your year-end adjustments, and then you archive your oldest fiscal year for the general ledger. As it says, this step is optional. You can have multiple years in one accounting system. The article ID is in chat, but I will also answer it Larissa, I just answered you directly. I also can put this link or email it to anybody if you want me to have you. I can put this link in chat too. Oh, can you guys see the chat? I just put a link in the chat too, a link to this article. So, do you have, I have another question. Do you have to reclose the year after those entries other than locking access? No. So you do not have to reclose the year. I mean, there's not really, as you'll see today, there's not necessarily like it's a closed process where you're locking the periods down, but that's pretty much it. You know, you're going to make sure that your books are clean for 2024, and then you lock access to 2024, and we advance to January of 2025. That's pretty much the close process, if you will, in Sage. Obviously, there's some other tasks involved in the other modules, making sure your subledgers are clean, like your AR and AP, making sure there are no credits open or things you need to write off, those type of things. But as far as the close process on the books, it's pretty much making sure everything is clean, locking the period. If you reopen the period to post something, then you just have to relock it. Sage, another question, Sage does not zero out income and expenses against retained earnings. Sage doesn't do that unless you archive. So your net income is not being closed out to retained earnings unless you archive the general ledger. You can make an entry to do it, but yeah, it doesn't do that until you archive the general ledger. Question, can you edit the W-2 and 1099 forms after closing payroll? Would you mind elaborating on edit? Do you mean, what do you mean edit them? Do you mean when you prepare the W-2s and 1099s, can you change the information on them, like update addresses or amounts? Is that what you mean? Okay, yes, you can. We talked about it last week. If you close payroll, so if you go through the process in your live environment of actually closing the payroll year, you can still make changes to that year in your existing system as long as the date of the check that you're preparing for that adjustment is in 2024, in that year. And then it will be in the 2024 W-2s because it has a 2024 payroll check date. All right, now we're going to talk about archiving the general ledger. We'll get into 1099s at the end. At this point in this process, we would have run the update, right? We've prepared to close, we're good to go. We've closed our payroll. We talked about that last week. We run the update, and now we're going to prepare for the general ledger archive. So period audit, what that means is in 1/6, when you advance to the next period, Sage runs an audit behind the scenes. Some of you that are on the call have received audit errors during that period, and you probably have found that most of the time it's something that can either be corrected with a recalculate, or if it doesn't get corrected that way, we have to reach out to Sage technical support to correct it. So what I'm talking about is when you advance the period, it runs an audit. It runs this exact same audit books. This audit runs in the background. It would tell you if there are errors. You usually could click on recalculate balances, which requires exclusive access, and it would correct the audit errors. You can just click recalculate balances and it goes in behind the scenes in these tables that we can't see, kind of readjust everything. And it says is it repairs certain audit discrepancies. That fixes it a lot of the time. Sometimes it doesn't, and you will still see an audit error. You have to reach out to Sage Tech Support by clicking on live chat, because there is no phone number, and chatting with them, letting them know you have a GL audit error. They'll either call you to fix it or have you, send them a backup of your company or something like that to fix it, or they just log into your company and fix it. If you're seeing audit errors right now, I would definitely get on the phone with them right now to fix it. And you can go and run this audit anytime. You could run it right now. And you can try to fix it right now. And if it doesn't fix it, I would call them today, or not call them, but live chat with them today, because as it gets closer to year end, they're going to be very busy and you might be hanging on for a long time for them to help you. So you want to make sure your audit's clean. I tell you just what I said here. You have to live chat with them. Also tell you what information you're going to need to chat with them. You're definitely going to need your software version and your Sage ID. If you don't know how to find that, it's under Home and Resources, About Sage 100 Contractor. This is the version of Sage you're on. This is the payroll version that you're on. And this is your ID. This is something that you can do not only if you're archiving the general ledger, but as you're closing this year, you want to verify that there are no unprinted checks. So as we're working throughout the year and we're preparing to cut a check, we should all know that 4 zeros means I'm going to print this check. I'm going to print this check later. 4 zeros means I'm going to print the check later. Then when we actually print the check, we assign a check number. The check number replaces the 4 zeros. So we should verify that there aren't any checks sitting in our queue to be printed before we close payroll, before we close the general ledger. So we want to go to 2.5. These instructions are in that PowerPoint presentation. And you want to put in your cash accounts in the GL account field, all of them. Just pick the range here. Then you're going to want to put in the transaction number of 4 zeros. And then you want to make this credit amount greater than or equal to a penny. That means it's going to pick up every 4-0 check that's greater than a penny in our system. Print preview, and yours should be clean. If you have something, which I set this up last night just so I could get something, if you have something, you want to make sure that you go into it and understand what happened with this check. Did we just forget to assign the check number? Did this check clear the bank? If it did, you can literally just type over the top of it, this was supposed to be the check number, and save. And then now that check number has been assigned. If it's a check that didn't clear the bank, we never actually issued it, we were going to, and something else happened, you can void the record. Any cash transactions have to be voided in this screen. I definitely would recommend, if this is not your practice, that before you void a check or a transaction, this is a check that was written, you make a note in the sticky note section telling the users, everybody, why you voided the check. Right, you can put your initials and the date if you wanted to, but if you make that best practice in your company before you guys void something, we write a note. That's actually in every window in Sage. And then you void it, because you can't unfortunately put a note after you void it because it's a void record. So you want to do it before. Then you void it. Everybody's going to know why it got voided. I have to save it first, and then I can void it. It's telling me I'm about to void it. Yes, I want to void it. And then everybody can see my note, why it got voided. Right? So if you make that best practice just across the board, it's just something that you guys will have and be able to use. Okay. Another thing that you want to do for year end and for the general ledger archive is for job status and removal, meaning we want these jobs to be removed from our system. They're really old, they've been done. This is the process. If any jobs are to be removed at year end, they must have a status of closed or refused. Jobs with outstanding AR, AP will not be removed. Even if they're closed or refused, if they have this outstanding, AR, AP, they're not going to be removed. If you need to change several jobs at a time to close status, you can use a pick list window to close the jobs. So to clean up your job list definitely is a great time to clean this up. Using the gray arrow, if I go to current, these should be just my current jobs, all the jobs we have going on right now. If there's more, take the time to clean it up, especially if you're going to archive. Jobs have to be in closed or refused in order to be removed. If you need to change several jobs at one time, you can go to options, update completed status. To update to a completed status, select the jobs from the list. So it'll give you all of your jobs. You can just click, double click, or click and drag, and it'll turn them red. Insert selected items, and then all of those jobs will move to closed. Their statuses will move to closed. So it's that making that change in bulk. You also can go to update closed status and do the same thing. Or you can select multiple, insert selected, and then those jobs have now been moved to closed. Another thing you can do is under options, remove refused closed jobs. If you want to see if a job can even be removed, you can go to closed jobs. You'll see your closed jobs. You can select them, and then you can verify the job removal. This is before you archive. You can say, these are the ones I want to remove. They are enclosed, and I want to verify that they can be closed. And it says the following jobs cannot be removed and will be unselected because they have balances, ledger transactions, open receivables, payables, or other references. So I wouldn't be able to remove these jobs in a archive process because they have, open balances or something is going on with them. So before you archive, you can run this just as a double check. These are the jobs I want to remove. Would they even be removed in an archive? How did I get here again? Options, I'm in 3.5, options, remove, refuse, close jobs, select closed, select the jobs, click verify. You're not going to hurt anything doing that. You're not removing them. It's not going to remove them. It would if you click remove jobs, which I never recommend. I would only use this tool as a way to verify if you can remove it or not. And what is the holdup? Because I want it gone. It's been open since 2015 or something. I had a question come in. Once closed jobs have been archived, are we able to charge time materials for warranty work in 2025 back to that closed job? No, I mean, so when you archive a job via a general ledger archive process, Sage makes a copy of the company during the general ledger archiving process and removes all of the information, including that job if it's able to be removed, and moves it over to a separate database in Sage. So in your live company, this would be our live company, the job would no longer be in the live company to charge to. For you asking the question, Lisa, I would say you're not archiving. You just got into Sage this year. So I wouldn't archive until, let's talk again in 2026 or something like that, maybe 27. I wouldn't archive. So if that wasn't meant to be asked that way, if you just meant if I close a job, can we still charge time to it? If you close a job, yes, you can charge time to a closed job. Your user will get a notice saying, this job is closed, do you want to continue? And they can say, yes, I do want to continue to post to a closed job. So if, you know, for you, I wouldn't recommend archiving. But if you're asking if it's closed, can you charge to it? Yes. Some other things you need to do to prepare for your general ledger archive. If you just moved into Sage this year in 24, I would not archive the general ledger. If you've been in Sage for a few years, you can archive your oldest fiscal year, and this is the process. But these are also the processes for closing the year out. If you use inventory, you want to make sure you're performing an inventory audit in 12.5. So if you guys are, any of you use inventory, 12.5 inventory audit, click audit. It'll run an audit. If it has issues, you can click repair and it should repair them. If not, you're going to have to reach out to Sage Tech Support. You want to make sure you're closing your purchase orders. That's just best practice, just, you know, as a daily function. Turn on auto close feature for the future. If you don't know what that means, in order to remove purchase orders during a general ledger archive, say you have POs open from 2022, they're still in open, but they've been fulfilled, and you want them removed during a general ledger archive, they have to be in a closed status in order to do that. So, oops. This status right here has to be closed. It's super painful to have somebody go through and close these manually. So best practice, if you don't already have it turned on, and you have to do this with administrative access, down here in the bottom left, it tells you if you're logged in with admin rights. I am logged in with admin rights down here. So options, close automatically when balance is 0 or less, or when all quantities are 0. If you don't have one of these turned on, I would recommend turning it on. My recommendation is when all quantities are 0, but that's up to you to decide. That way it automatically closes a purchase order out. That way when you go to archive the general ledger, they are already closed. Can you reopen one? Yes, just move it to open. These are some reports that you're gonna wanna print or save, and you wanna do a records count. We did a records count last week during our payroll close. You wanna make sure that you print your trial balance, balance sheet, income statement. I gave you the reports, numbers. When you're ready to change the default posting period, do so from 12 to 1, as I just showed you guys how to do that. Sage 100 Contractor does not require you to close your books in order to move forward with next year's transactions. So you don't have to close December 2024 to start posting to January 2025. You just have to have January 2025 open. So, you know, December is going to be ending here in a few weeks. We could still have our default of December, because January opens up whenever December is our default posting period. We saw that. You could, your team, your AP team, payroll could be posting in January, even though January isn't the default. That just happens all the time anyways. They could be posting in the next month as long as it's open for them to post to. So I had some questions come in. Once closed jobs have been archived. I already answered that one. Is there a job status that prevents anything from being posted to it? Yes, not a job status. Let me take that back. But there is a lot of my clients who don't want posting to jobs, they will go to edit, inactivate record. So down here in the bottom right, it becomes inactive. You, the team, cannot post to jobs in inactive status. You can still run reports and things like that on these jobs that are inactive, but they're there and they're locked. Nothing can happen to them in an inactive status. If it's closed, like I said, your team will be getting a notice that it's closed. So archiving the general ledger, first make a backup, and you must have the default period of 1 open of the new year. That must be your default. So January must be your default before you can archive your general ledger. I already made January my default in my company. In the database administration tool, select archive database, archive the oldest fiscal year. Sage is automatically going to recognize your oldest general ledger year. It's going to tell you what the oldest year is that you can archive. Select the company to be archived, click create archive. So we are going to do this process. We're going to archive our company. Archive the oldest fiscal year. I'm in the database administration tool. I'm choosing my company. It says use this option to remove accounting data for the fiscal year of 2024 from the selected company and place it in an archive company. I click create archive. It's a wizard. It's very simple. It tells you it's going to archive and remove the oldest fiscal year's data and place it in an archive database. You can access the company in the archives. It says make sure you've completed all your posting from that year. So that's why I'm saying don't do it for 24. You're going to want to do it for 22 or 20 if you don't want that year's data in your system. And then you just click next. Click begin preparation. It's going to run these different tasks. While it's doing that, I'm going to answer questions. I apologize if you already answered. This is an update year-end guide for 24. Updated. The one I found is dated May. Janet, what's your email address? Will you give me your email address in this chat and I will email it to you? Thank you. All right, so we are done with that process of the preparation. Once all of these are green and checked, maintenance is complete, ledger audited, inventory audited, it created a backup. We click next. So do we want the system to remove jobs with closed or refused status and all related records? Yes, if so, check the box. If not, don't check the box. Do you want the system to remove accounts payable invoices with paid or void status and no job number? Do you want the system to remove service invoices if you have the service module that are paid, completed, or void? You can do that with a date prior to whatever you want. Remove POs with a closed status and no job number. Remove inventory allocations with a no job number. The reason why it's saying no job number is because if these transactions here, this has a job number, the purchase orders and inventory allocation have a job number, they'll already be removed with this step, right? So then you click next. That is not what I meant to put. Then you have to enter the name for the company archive. So, like I said last week, you want to keep the naming of these archives consistent. If you put the year first, and then whether it's general ledger or payroll, and then archive, it is laid out very nicely in your company list. You don't have to try to figure out and look around for each one. As long as they're named consistently, it's organized very nicely in order. You can see payroll and general ledger together for that year. It's nice. Then you just click begin archiving. You're about to archive the accounting data for the fiscal year. All accounting transactions from the year are going to be removed from the company. You should have at least one backup before continuing. I ran my backup. So any questions while this is running? No questions. Does anybody else need the 2024 year-end guide that I can email to you? If you can't get it, I can email it to you. I had another question come in. So when you said we could archive whenever we want, does that really mean whenever we want if we are in a January month? So you can archive the general ledger whenever you want. That is true. So to archive 2024 data, which I'm telling you not to do, but if you wanted to, I do have a client who does archive every single year. That's just their process and that's what they do and that's fine. They're gonna archive 2024. You have to be at least in the January of 2025 to archive 2024. That's what that means. So if you are planning to archive 2020, it's still in your system and you don't want it in your system, you could have done that. You could do that anytime you want. It doesn't have to be January. It could be June or it could be November of whatever year. You can archive the oldest fiscal year whenever you want. But to archive the previous year, you have to at least be in set. Your default posting period has to be in January of the next year. I hope that was clear. Did that answer your question? Okay, good. More questions. All right, I like it. I assume we can do the GL archive at any time of the year, the same as the payroll. Yes, that is correct. You can do that whenever you want. Just keep in mind that when you archive the general ledger, it's going to take the accounting activity and move it into a separate database. So if you're our accountant that likes to look at historical data and you want it all in one system, you definitely want to keep that in mind, because you won't be able to do it in one system when you archive the general ledger. You'd have to log out and not log out, but switch companies, switch to the archive to run that additional year's information of whatever it is you're trying to look up. But you can archive at any time. Yes, you archive the general ledger the same as you archive the payroll. I will show you that. Camille, would you mind sending me your email address, please? So I can send you that year-end guide. All right, we're done with the general ledger archive. So it looks like it completed successfully. I can click view results on the maintenance tasks. So it tells me that 1 job was removed, 4 jobs could not be removed. They're set to inactive. So it's telling me, there's a little asterisk here telling me what can be removed or why these couldn't be removed because I had them in inactive. 51 payable invoices were removed. So it gives you what happened during that process. Then you can click next. Now it's going to create another backup of the database. Tanner, oh, you sent it to me, okay. I'll show you guys where to print the 2024 handout, the year-end guide I'm going to send you. I'm going to send it to you anyways, but I will definitely show you guys where you can print that as well. If you weren't on last week's call, you probably missed it. And then our marketing team, they did send out the handout from last week's call, and they're also going to send out the handout for this week's call. So if you can't print it, you don't know where it's at, they're going to send it out. Did everybody get last week's handout and recording? If you didn't, let me know and I can get that. Cool. Thanks for those email addresses. I have yours, Janet W, Janet H, and then Nicole and Tanner, Scott, John. I will send you guys the 2024 year-end guide. And then, oh, John, you're looking to have the handout here. So, John, did you get last week's handout from our marketing team? Because they're going to email it again. I just want to make sure that you got that one successfully and there won't be any issues getting you this one. If so, then drop your email address and I'll send it. Oh, you have it there. Okay. John, I can send you both of the handouts then from last week and this week. Or do you need payroll or no? Okay. All right, so archiving is complete. I'm trying to multitask here. That's not going very good. Okay, I'm not going to do that right now. I'll do that after the call. So archiving is complete. It's saying that if further accounting adjustments are needed to the year you just archived, this is what I was talking about earlier, you have to make the adjustment to the archive, and then you also have to make the adjustment on your current books to period 0, because you want them to be affecting the archive database and your current year starting balances. So that's kind of painful, like I said. I just wouldn't do it. Before you archive that old fiscal year, make sure it's clean, make sure your entries are in. that's it. Just finished my archive. Let me show you guys where we're at in that process. Let me also talk about, so when Sage is archiving, the following are removed or can be removed, like we talk about: closed refused jobs, payable invoices, closed POs, inventory allocation, service invoices. Accounting data is removed for the oldest fiscal year. Beginning balances are adjusted and retained earnings is closed out to the current. This does not happen if you're not archiving. A new database is created for the archive general ledger database. It will only be accessible by toggling to the archive company. What that means, let me log in. I need to get my server updated with memory, huh? So click on show archives here, and then this is my archive company. So after you archive in the archive database, you're going to want to make sure you run all those same reports that we ran during our preparation process. It was up a few slides, and make sure the numbers match. You also want to think about changing security in the archived company, because we don't want anybody making changes. If you update all the user groups to a no, to everything, no, they can't do anything. Nobody can accidentally save, void, etc. in that archive database. That's just best practice. If you want the company administrator to still have access, then give them access. And then you also would probably want to prevent, lock all the periods down to prevent accidental postings. Obviously, if nobody can save in there, they can't change anything or void. What I'm talking about, remember the background is red on archive databases. So if your company is red already, you might want to pay attention to what company you're in. It tells you up here, you're in the archive. If you want to know how to change the background, I talked about it last week, 7.1, you can change it to a different color, your background color in 7.1. Oh my heavens. Company color right here. So you can pick the color that you want your company to be. So in the utilities security groups in your archive, this is where I was saying, put a no on all these and a no on all these, then nobody can do anything and change any information in an archive company. You might even, you leave yours open if you wanted to, whatever group you're in, but everything else you want to lock down. In your current database, after you've archived, you can remove unused vendors now because you've archived and potentially removed, accounts payable invoices. In 4.4, you can just delete them. This also gives you an opportunity in 1.8 to make changes to your general ledger. This is if you're archiving every year. You can change the accounting structure. It can only be done before any entries are made. So if you are a company that archives every single year, you can change your general ledger because there are no, transactions in the new year yet in 2025. But if you're every other year, then you're not going to be able to do that because you may be using it. See how it's white now? These are white. This is my 1.8 setup, general ledger. I can now make changes to it because I archived my previous year. It's the only time that you can do that. Reclassify owner's drawing distribution to retain earnings if applicable. I tell you how to do that if that's something that you do. So any questions about advancing to the next fiscal year or archiving your general ledger before I move on to the 1099 process? No questions. All right. So 1099 preparation. Again, we want to make sure that the update has been done before we do this, right? We talked about that. Make sure you've updated your system to the newest version, 26.3. You want to ensure all your vendors that need to be issued 1099s are set up properly. We're just going to go through that very quickly. I tell you how to do that in the PowerPoint presentation, but I will also go through it with you. In 4.4, when you set up a vendor, and this is just best practice throughout the year, under financial information is where their tax ID number goes. This is the 1099 type. And the newer versions of Sage, there's an NEC here. It used to be miscellaneous. This is non-employee compensation. The rest of this will print on a separate form. This is a 1099 NEC. This is a miscellaneous, or this is an INT, miscellaneous, and then no 1099. If you have any vendors with undetermined, best practice would be to clean that up. And I'll show you how to run a report to get that information. But nobody should be undetermined, because to me, that means question. I don't know if they get one or not. But if you make it best practice to set up vendors in your system with the W-9, you're going to know if they get one or not. If the vendor is a person, a sole proprietor, their federal tax ID number is a social security number like this one. Don't worry, that's not a real, at least, I mean, maybe it is, I don't know, I just made it up for this call. But if that's yours, I apologize. General information tab, we need to have the owner name here. So if John's business was that's his company. I almost spilled a whole cup of water on my computer. That would have been terrible. So his company is the Lawn Doctors. He's a sole proprietor. Tax ID number is a social security number. You want to make sure on the general information tab, their name is here. Because when it prints the 1099, it has to go to the owner, not to their company. So make sure that's clean where you have a social security number here. And make sure that the 1099 is designated. You also want to make sure you attach a W-9. If you guys are collecting those, you can attach them here. You don't have to do that, but it's a good idea. So it's there and readily available for a double, triple check. If you're sending out 1099s electronically, there's a box right here that if you've captured or you have the consent on hand from John, you can check the box and put John's email address here to send that to. There is a consent in Sage that you can send to your vendors. Do that now if you want to send them electronically. 4.5, electronic 1099 consent. Select vendors. These are all my vendors in my system that are set up to get a 1099. So if you open this up and you don't see anybody, then you don't have anybody set to get one. I really wish there was a select all button, but there isn't. So you'd have to click on them, unfortunately, click OK, and then you can run the report. It'll print their information on the consent. You can email it over to them and ask them to sign it so that they can consent for you to send that 1099 electronically versus having to print it on a piece of paper. In the PowerPoint presentation, I did give you the solution ID. This is the KB article number for the forms you would need to order if you're going to print and mail them out. Just don't go to Office Depot and buy forms and think they're going to work, because it might not work. Make sure they're the same form. Another thing you want to do in preparation for your 1099 process is run a report for 1/1/61. There is a 1099 type field here. Where I would probably start with is 0, right? You have to put equal to 0. So this is a list of all my undetermineds. Remember, undetermined means I don't know if they get one or not. So I would first have my team, hey, call these people. Let's get a W-9 from them. Do they get one or not? Do that now. What's nice about this is you can click into them from this report and you can update them. They don't get one. If they don't get one, make sure it's a 7. They don't get one. If you see an Inc. or a corporation in their name, you probably don't get one. But I would still get a W-9 just to double check. And if they have a tax ID number, that's again another, like we put that in our system, we have a W-9, somehow we got that number, double check the W-9. You're seeing the year here, 24 1099, 23 1099, 22 1099. The system will keep track of those balances in one system. You don't have to run it from your your archive. You can do that in your live company. Those notes are in the system or in the PowerPoint presentation. So again, you want to make sure this is clean. There's nothing on here. Go through them. For new users to Sage, you need to make sure that you have updated your 1099 starting balances for any payments made outside of Sage, but made in your old accounting software for the current calendar year. How do you do that? So you should run a report from your legacy system. And if I did your implementation, then let me know and I can help you load this information. But you're going to go into for 4 options, 1099 balance startup adjustment. This is also in the PowerPoint presentation. You'll get your report from your legacy system, whatever your go live date was. Say that we went live on October 1st. I'm going to put September 30th here. And I'm going to say, in my legacy system, I paid this supplier $1,500. I mean, wow. $1,500. And then I click save. So now Peterson Construction has been paid $1,500 when I run a 1099 report. They're going to get a 1099 for $1,500 plus anything additional I've paid in Sage. So make sure if you went live in Sage this year, you load that information for the vendors that get a 1099. Totals are automatically accumulated by year in Sage, so you don't have to reset 1099 balances. So you're not going to have to do that in here. If you wanted to see a balance, you can go to pull up a vendor or supplier and go to options, 1099 balances. You're going to see every year's 1099 balances. You know that I archived 24 general ledger data, and I just loaded a startup balance for 24 for $1,500 to this vendor, and it's showing. So when I print a 1099 out of here, it's going to be printed for $1,500. So before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to go answer some questions. Last year, the IRS started rejecting any company names with punctuation in them. Where does Sage pull the name into the 1099, and do we have to go ahead and delete any punctuation in the full company name? So I have seen where we prepare the vendor 1099 forms in this, which we are going to do. And if there's a punctuation that is not supposed to be there, Sage is going to warn you. It's going to tell you that, there's a error, and it will tell you to take it out. Sage is pulling the 1099 information from the vendor setup screen. So from this screen, if there's a punctuation or something that doesn't belong, I would recommend fixing it first at the vendor level and then redoing your 1099 process. That way, next year, you're not going to run into the same issue. If you're sending them to IRS electronically, can't you just print the vendor copy with the instructions on a blank paper? Yes, you can. $1099s are required if payments are less than $600, are not required. That is true, yes. If they're not greater than $600, you don't have to send them a 1099. It doesn't appear that Sage has a way to filter for this. Do you recommend manually filtering by changing the 1099 type to 7? No, Sage will only prepare 1099s in the process if it's over $600. It's only going to show up on the list, the report that I just ran. And the report that I ran, again, is in the PowerPoint presentation that you're going to get. 411, report 61. And you can run it for everything if you wanted to, but I like to run it first by undetermined to make sure I clean those up. If I want to see it all, I just leave it blank and run the report without any filters. It's going to give me everything in my system. Yes, there are going to be amounts showing up here for less than $600, but that's because I ran this report, you know, with a filter. It's still, or with a filter, I ran it with no filters, excuse me. So I ran it even for no 1099s. I probably wouldn't want to do that. Let's do everything less than $7, because 7 is no 1099. Let's try that. So, like Walter's CPA, it's less than $600. This report is not going to filter out that amount because I can run this report at any time. By the end of the year, this could be greater than $600. So this report is just going to tell you who have we set up, you know, given the filters to receive 1099s. It doesn't matter if it's over or under $600. There's ones on here that are set to receive them that have no balance. This is just going to show you everything. Again, we don't want undetermined. Did that help, Susan? Sorry, I'm going through questions. Can we put the name without punctuation in the owner name and leave it in the vendor name and the owner name overrides it in the 1099? Excuse me. So the owner name is only going to pull into a 1099 if this is a social security number. Otherwise, it's going to take the vendor name. Why is my 61 report listing all payments versus a summary total and it is not showing the previous years either? I don't know what company you're in or what year version you're on, Janet, but I mean, I can help you with that. That is correct, Michelle. If it's you'll see. We had a supplier in there that CPA, it was $580. When I go to produce 1099s, they're not gonna have a 1099. I'll show you that. So in our process here, our slide that I'm talking about, after your final accounts payable check run and you've cleaned up all of your 1099 designations, I talk about running 415-60 or 61. Talk about the different criteria that you can run it. After verification, ensure that company information is accurate in 7.1, and then we're gonna go run the 1099 forms. That is in the PowerPoint presentation. So make sure your company information is correct here. We talked about that last week because that's where it's pulling the tax form information from. So if you have a new address or something is not correct, it's going to be pulling onto the tax forms incorrectly. Holy mac here. So let's just update this address. Vendor forms. So there is a separate process if you have to run an NEC versus a miscellaneous versus an interest versus the dividend. So it's up to you guys. If you have those different designations, you have to run the process 4 different times. It's not all in one. You're going to switch it to calendar year 24, run report. I should make these classes 2 hours. Is this 2-hour class? I don't know. I thought it was 90 minutes. So you can test drive this. Like I said, if you're test driving it, please keep in mind that there's an update coming out that could be updating some of it, right? It's coming out in a couple days. But I'm going to start processing my 1099s. You can test drive it just like you can with your W-2s. We talked about that last week. It's going to take you through some validation forms to make sure the information is correct. If you use a single data file, you're going to want to say, I use a single data file. If you have multiple companies in Sage, you can say yes, and then you'll go through a merge process of merging the databases together. The red, it tells you what has to be completed. Sorry that I'm late, you guys. Are you filing for your employer or your third party? What type of filer are you? Do you use a transfer agent? It tells you right here what a transfer agent is. If you do, check the box or the radio button. If you have state tax information or accounts you need to add, you can do that here. Local tax items. Do you have any recipients who have elected to receive 1099 forms electronically? If you had the box checked at the vendor level, this would, that they are electing to receive electronically, this would say yes, and it would be grayed out, meaning you couldn't change it to no, because you've marked at the vendor level that you have a consent on hand by somebody who is elected to receive it electronically. How do you want your social security numbers or tax ID numbers to be displayed? Truncated with asterisks or X's. Next, this wizard is going to look very similar to what we saw last week during the payroll W-2 process. Is pretty much the same. This just tells you, what you should do: review, print a copy, report submission. Just like last week, in the blue area, it tells you what to do. Verify recipient taxpayer ID number, and then it's going to highlight the column that it's talking about or referring to. It wants you to verify this information. Then click next if it looks good to you. Check the FEIN if it's a tax ID number. This one is not checked because it's a social security number. Verify their name. This is where I'm saying during this process, if there's a problem, it's going to tell you. There's individual recipient records with identical information. Click OK to remove the identical information. And I do want you to, Michelle, you to see that that CPA's check for $580 is not here. Verify recipient address. Verify the income boxes. Next. Verify the state is correct. So it's telling you up here what to do. This is your final opportunity to double check it. If you agree or double check. Then you're going to get this pop-up from Atrix. If you sign up through Atrix, they will remit electronically. For these 6 forms is $27 to send it to the IRS and to the recipient. They'll just print and mail them. Other options, if you wanted to do other options, you can print them if you wanted to. You have to e-file if you have over 10 forms, total forms to the IRS. So you'd have to, for the Social Security Administration, wherever you're sending your forms. If you want to print everything, it's going to get this pop-up and tell you about the 10 aggregate of 10 forms during a calendar year of any kind. You have to do it electronically. It's a new rule. Again, it's going to tell me that I can't do this, that I'm not remaining compliant, but I could print them. We talked about this last week. I could go through the process of printing everything. I can save them as a PDF, and then I can close out of it and do it again and do it electronically just so I have my own copies. Cost no money. Yes, you can change. Yeah, I could have changed amounts on the fly. Somebody's asking me, could I have changed the amount on the fly for somebody that you may be making loan payments or have a principal and interest in them, but you only want the 1099 INT to be interest? I could make a change. Well, first of all, on the INT, the vendor would have to be set up to get an INT for it to even show up in the 1099 INT. But in the grid, when I saw the amounts, I could make any changes to the grid or anything in that grid. Changing it in the grid of that during the process doesn't update the vendor though. So like I said, I could print them. It's asking me if I want W-2 e-file service, the state that it's going to file. This is just a review telling me that this is what it's going to print. Print the federal, the California, the recipient, and the payer. It's going to print all of these. While that's pulling up, I have a question. We have more than one company in Sage. Can we just issue 1099s for only one of our companies on Sage at a time? Or do we have to issue a 1099 for all the companies at the same time? Do your companies have separate tax ID numbers? Oh, then yeah, you can do them separately because they're in a separate database in Sage. As long as they have separate tax ID numbers, you can, do them whenever you want in the different databases. I have a couple clients who have separate databases for the same tax ID number. And in that case, no, you would have to do it at the same time. So this is up here, it's a wizard. It's telling you 1 of 7, it's telling you what it's printing. This is the federal 1099 NEC. It tells you what to do. If I wanted to see both pages, I can toggle between the pages here, print final and next step. I could print it. I can print it to PDF or put in the paper. The official red paper is no longer required. You cannot print the federal 1099 copy on a perforated paper. Insert plain paper now. So I could print it to a PDF. I can save it, whatever I want to do. Next step. Report 2, 1096. So it's very simple. Like I said, it's just a wizard. Yeah, Amanda, they're going to, our marketing team sent out last week's recording along with the PowerPoint. They will do the same thing with this class. If you weren't here in the beginning of the class or you want a recording, the marketing team, if you registered for the class, you'll get a copy of the recording and you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation or the handout. This is report 3. So if you need to jump off, no worries, you'll be covered. Because I'm running late. Obviously, I didn't realize I would be. I guess I'm talking slow today. Report 7, this is the 1099 NEC. Next, again, you can just save all these to PDF. I'm not printing them or saving them. Oh, thanks, Michelle. I'm good. All right, that makes me feel better. I was like trying to rush. The webinar was set for 2 hours. I thought they said 90 minutes, so that makes me happy. Good, I'm running on time. Report 6 of 7, this is the California state form. So your 1096s, in case anybody ever knows or wants to know, the 1096s is a total of all your 1099s. It should, and it's good to check them. 6 1099s, and that's the total of them. That's what a 1096 is, a summary, right? Thanks for everybody chiming in saying I'm not late. It was scheduled for 2 hours. I've been sick going on over a week, so I'm a little bit cloudy. So report 7 of 7, this is the last one. These are the instructions that you would send to the recipient. If you're printing on regular paper, you could just print on the back of it. Then you're going to get the same kind of summary that we did last week here. The history, this is where you're able to see what was completed. It's saying incomplete for me because I didn't print them. I didn't do anything with them. You can correct completed 1099s here. You can e-file or print incompleted, reprint them, or start over. So like I said, if you wanted to go through this process and print them or save them as a PDF so you have them, and then start over once we get to this point and then do the electronic version, that way you have your copies, you can do that. When you e-file, you are able to send a letter to the recipients with online access information. There's a letter, it tells them where the website they can log into, it tells them their username and their password so that they can log in and get their 1099 electronically. Same thing on the W-2 side. If you file electronically, you're going to be able to give the user, the recipient, the information to log in electronically. I was having trouble emailing last year, so my W-2's out. So I sent out the letter to everybody and they could just log in and get them because I was having trouble emailing it out of my system. So this is an alternate way to get them the information so they can get what they need. Then when you're done, you can click close and your process is complete. So that was NEC. You would also have to do the same steps for miscellaneous and INT and DIV. You'd have to do it 4 different times if you have these, your vendors set up to receive the different forms. Any questions about that process? If you close out the form, the 1099 form, and then later you need to come back, somebody says, hey, I got my 1099 and it's wrong. You can open up the form 4.5, go to view history, same with the W-2s. Click on 1099, this is the prior year. If you have been in Sage for multiple years, you're gonna see every year. Click edit. excuse me. And then this window pops open where you can take action with whatever it is that you need to do. So if you have to correct ones, you can correct them next, and then it'll take you to the screen to where you can correct it. Just got a question coming in about the 1099, and I swear I had it open. Hold on a second, maybe it's right here. Yeah. So this is also an article, KB article, knowledge base article. I can put this in chat. This is actually not on the PowerPoint presentation, but I will put this in chat. And I will also respond to Cindy, who's asking the question. This is the article number, but the question that was posed, can you give a just explanation of what type of company should receive Form 1099? Oh, well, what kind of companies? For example, LLC, potentially, yes, your W-9 is going to tell you what type of company it is. It tells you their designation. This also tells you when this article that I just put in here, when do I use Form 1099 miscellaneous and what is the deadline? So this talks about, you know, there's an NEC, there's a miscellaneous form. So it talks to you about who gets what form. So if you're unclear about who gets what form, this is a good article to tell you who gets what form. I just put it in the knowledge or in the chat. You can also click on the link. What is Form 1099 NEC and what is the deadline? And that will give you that information. I had a question come in. If you archive payroll with the previous tax, will the previous tax filings be archived as well? So are you asking me if you archive payroll, will you be able to see the history in that history box? Is that correct? I'm going to put this link. Let's see if I can link it links to the other one. Yeah. Also, what forms will be linked what forms will be needed is also here. So I'm going to put this link in the chat to this article. I don't know the answer to that question, Janet. I can test it and let you know, and I can let everybody know. But does anybody know that's on the call right now? The question is if you've archived payroll, I'm sure I have some people on the call who've archived payroll. Can you click in federal forms? If you've archived payroll, do me a favor and go to 541 and view history. Dang, Shantal. On your W-2, view history. Are you able to see your archived years here? I would say no, but that would just be a guess. But I can test it for you and let you know, Janet. I mean, you can probably tell too. You just pop over to the archive database and see if they're there, and then check your live company if they're not there, right? Nobody answered, so sorry about that, but I will. The answer is no. No, thank you, Cindy. The answer is no, you cannot see archive years of payroll taxes in the current year. So if you've archived your payroll and you're trying to see W-2 history, and you've already archived it, you can't see it in that live environment. You'd have to toggle over to your archive database to see it. Thank you. Save me a step. This is something else that I printed from Knowledge Base that I can also send you guys, but this is the archive fiscal year checklist. It has links to the timeline. It, helps you, it talks about, gives you an article on when should I archive last year's company data. Step-by-step checklist if you're going to be archiving. Kind of everything we went through today too. There's links to Sage knowledge base articles. So if anybody wants this, let me know. I can also send that. And I can actually just include everything to everybody if everybody wants. That's fine. All right, let's wrap up the call by discussing the last slide here. So what are your resources for help? We talked about this last week. If you need help, you can reach out to support at ETHOSystems. That's my company that I work for. Schedule time with your consultant. This is like a very busy time for consultants. So whoever you work with, jump onto their calendar or email them if they don't have a calendar link and get time scheduled if you need help. Because if you don't do it in advance, it's probably not going to happen. And to get help, you also could probably wait until January, right? At least if it's, I need help closing, preparing my 1099s, my W-2s, that could be second week of January, get everybody through the holidays if you want. There's a year-end procedures guide. This is, somebody asked me on the call, where do I find the 2024 year-end guide? If you go to Home and Resources, Product Documents, Year-End Guide, you should find the guide that I'm talking about. That's the year-end guide. So, Home and Resources, Product Documents, Year-End Guide. That should take you to the October 2024 year-end guide. This is the one that Janet, I believe, was saying that she could not get, not Janet S, but Janet W. So this is where you're going to find the guide. If you put your email address, you've given it to me in chat, then I'm going to email you this if you can't get to it. If you can, now that I've shown you where to get it, then you're going to get it twice because I have your email address down. That's okay though. You can just delete it. Sage Knowledge Base, Home and Resources Sage Support Knowledge Base. There's a Sage Year-End Center. If you were on the last call, Sage Support Knowledge Base. Under Knowledge Base, I just went to Sage. I kind of did that really fast. Home and Resources, Sage Support Knowledge Base. If you don't have that flagged or tagged or shortcut, bookmarked, definitely do it. I use it every single day. Sage Knowledge Base on the right-hand side is Year-End Center. This Year-End Center has frequently asked questions, learning. You can take, if you're a Sage subscription, you can go to Sage University. There's year-end training. Sage is actually having year-end trainings this year. I haven't seen that in previous years. Here's a US checklist of timeline, payroll, general ledger, archiving, vendor 1099s. It goes through everything you need to know. The Canadian checklist, if you're a Canadian client, this is also your checklist. So everything you need to know can be found here or in any of those resources. You guys have tons of resources available to you. Sage City, there's also a year-end area in Sage City. You can get to that. It's not called Sage City anymore. I should probably update my PowerPoint. That's now called Community Hub. Some of you have been in the Community Hub. You can click on the little guy or little circle here, join it, ask any questions that you need to. Consultants, this is the consultant, they'll jump on and answer. So you can find year-end information here too. You can search up year-end and it will take you there. And then Sage support, like I said, if you need to talk to Sage, you can't call Sage, tell your IT company they can't call Sage, but you want to live chat with them. And now I'm early. Now I'm finishing early. Now I feel really good about myself. So does anybody have any questions about anything regarding your end? Is everybody comfortable closing your end? Does anybody who's gone through this process have any tips for new users that are just going through this for the first time? Something that maybe I didn't talk about or cover? Crickets. Everybody's excited to go get the process started. Okay, well, if there is no questions, I don't see any coming through chat. I'll give you 6 minutes of your life back to go grab some coffee before your next task. And have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if I don't talk to you. If you are my client and you need me to help you through this process, please jump on my calendar and book a session with me right away because I'm getting very full. If you don't see something, reach out to me in an email and I will make sure we can chat somehow and I can get you through it. All right, guys, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna go drink some tea and take a quick 24-minute nap. All right, bye guys, thank you.